What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. So last week, obviously, I made my thoughts and predictions on the conference championship games that in college football that happened this past weekend. Well, those are finally in the book. The 12-team playoff is here. The format is screwed up. There is so much controversy to talk about today, and we're going to get into all of it after what happened this past week in conference championship week. And it is nothing short of controversial. It is nothing short of it. It is exactly what everybody predicted, which was madness. That's exactly what everybody predicted at the beginning of the year, mid-season, and even towards the back end of the season. We all knew there was going to be controversy. We all knew there was going to be madness, and it did not disappoint whatsoever. So I went on a tangent last week about a bunch of things. Well, this week, we're going to get into the real nitty-gritty of this crap. So stay tuned for some big rants this entire video because, oh boys, there are a lot to talk about. And obviously, you all know I'm a Bucked Up ambassador, so use promo code SHOW32, get yourself 20% off any and all pre-workout orders at buckedup.com. And be sure to click like and subscribe and click the bell for notifications so you always stay up to date with new episodes that come out and all my shorts. And really, realistically, just whenever I post for the best college football material you could ever ask for. I'm going to put to shame, not really to shame, I'm going to try my best to do as good a job or not bet or even better than Fox, ESPN. Take the bias out of it. That's what I'm all about. Take the bias out of it. Unless you're a Miami Hurricane fan like myself, and then it's all Miami or nothing. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, obviously, the 12-team playoff is set. The 12 teams who will be battling it out for the national championship this year, it is officially set, and it is nothing short of controversial. So let's go over the conference champions from past week. Or you had Oregon and Penn State in the Big Ten title game. I predicted Oregon would win. I was right. SEC title game, you had Texas against Georgia in the rematch from earlier this year in Austin, where Georgia's defense really snuffed out Texas. And I thought Texas would have won this game. I really did. But it just wasn't meant to be. Georgia has Texas' number, and they beat them again in overtime with their backup quarterback because Carson Beck got injured at the end of the half. And yeah, Georgia, yet again, SEC champions. Then you have Boise State winning the Mountain West over UNLV. No shock, really no shock there. Ashton Genty is a Heisman finalist and probably the best college football running back since Barry Sanders, so no shocks there. Arizona State mollywhopping Iowa State in the Big 12 title game, 45-19. Unreal. You know, what Kenny Dillingham has done at Arizona State is nothing short of remarkable. Picked to finish dead last. 16 out of 16 teams in the Big 12, and they went on a fantastic run this year and now have one of the top 4 seeds in the college football playoff. And then you got the ACC championship game. The one that everybody was talking about had the biggest implications on the college football playoff. The biggest implications. Clemson, off a walk-off 56-yard field goal at the end of regulation, take down the SMU Mustangs to win their 8th conference title in the past 10 years. That's remarkable. Even though I don't like Clemson whatsoever, that's still pretty remarkable. So that's what happened last week. So let's get into the controversy. Let's get into the first problem. Everybody last week, a lot of people were up in arms about Miami being ranked lower than Alabama, effectively ending their chance at the college football playoff. Now, I was one to speak on it last week where if SMU won, Clemson wouldn't be in, obviously, but if SMU won, they would have obviously got that bye, and the 11 seed was up for grabs between Alabama, Miami, South Carolina, and Ole Miss. Those were realistically the 4 teams that everybody was talking about, and everybody was crapping on Miami, and I went on a big tangent last week. I went on a big tangent about Alabama, their losses to Vanderbilt, their losses to Oklahoma, compared to Miami's losses against Syracuse and Georgia Tech. Like, I was more understanding. As a Miami fan, I understand completely the argument that Alabama would be ranked above the Hurricanes because the resume dictates it. It realistically does. Miami didn't necessarily play anybody this year, but Miami still had the number one offense in the nation. They didn't have a bad loss on their resume. They went 10-2. Alabama went 9-3, albeit in the SEC, which realistically we all know that the SEC is the best conference in college football. It's not close. We all know that. But a lot of people were up in arms about Alabama getting the nod over Miami. Well, now this week, since SMU lost, the biggest question mark remained was, would it be SMU getting the 11 seed or would it be Alabama getting the 11 seed? That was the big talk, really the talk of the town when it came to that. Everything else worked itself out in the college football playoff, give or take that the format dictates. Do I think that this is the true, the best 12 teams in college football? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't think that for 1 second. But when you look at SMU compared to Alabama, this is what the argument came down to. And the committee already set a precedent for this last week when they didn't move SMU, when they moved Alabama above Miami. Like, they set precedents about how, and Ward Manuel, the head of the committee, came out and said they will not punish teams for making their conference championship. So here's the whole thing about it. That's another data point. This is all based on what the committee was saying. If SMU, let's say SMU decided to opt out and they didn't want to play in the ACC title game against Clemson. Okay. What are you going to do then? Because SMU last week was ranked 8. Now, this would never happen because players, they want to play, coaches want to coach, they want to compete for conference championships. That's the most realistic outcome. I can't see a scenario where a team, a coach, or players who have the opportunity to go to a conference championship, I don't see them not playing in that game. But let's just say for hypothetical standpoints, SMU decided to sit out the ACC championship game against Clemson. Well, they were ranked number 8 last week. They were ranked 8. There's no more data points. So realistically, SMU would have been safe either way if they just opted out of their conference championship game. They would have been safe because they were ranked 8th. There's no more data points to go off of. There's no more games for SMU to look and compare. What they had is what they had. So realistically, why wouldn't coaches sit out of their conference championship games? Why wouldn't they? That's just one more. Are you going to take the risk of going to a conference title game and losing, possibly getting yourself kicked out of the college football playoff? Or are you just going to stay put and, just stay where you are in the rankings? If you're in the top 12, if you're in the top 11 at that point, what does it matter? There's no rhyme or reason that the committee should move you one way or another because there's no more data points to go off of. So the system already is flawed. We already know that, but we're going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But as far as Alabama and the SMU argument, did the committee get it right? In the context of the format of the college football playoff, the 12-team bracket, I believe the committee did get it right. Would it be my personal pick? As much as I hate Alabama, realistically, no. This would not have been my pick. Alabama, they realistically would be in a 12-team playoff in my book. I believe Alabama, even though they're severely flawed, I think Alabama would be in my personal 12-team playoff. I wish that they did something more like the NFL, but, we don't have that right now. Later down the line, I'm sure that they'll make adjustments. But as far as the argument, here's the problem. If the committee bounced SMU in favor of Alabama, you have officially killed the meaning of the conference championship games. You've officially killed it. If you let Alabama in over SMU this past weekend, you killed all conference championship games, because it clearly shows at that point you can make your conference title game, but unless you win it, it doesn't really matter. It's just another game, which for me, as a lifelong college football fan, the conference championship games should mean something. They should mean something. So as far as that, I think the committee got it right. Now, my personal opinions I have a completely different top 12 in my mind right now comparing to the college football playoff rankings that we have now set. But again, that's a topic for another day. But as far as the Alabama and SMU debate, did the committee get it right? Yes, only because the committee would have this was a lose-lose situation, no matter what. There was no good answer. There was no good answer here. You either put in an Alabama team who didn't make the SEC championship with horrible losses to Vanderbilt, giving up 45 points, and a horrible loss to Oklahoma, losing 24-3. But this Alabama team also beat Georgia, so the second seed in the playoff, and they play in the SEC. Or do you go with an SMU who only has one loss on the year, and that's to a BYU team who is in the top 25 and was competing for the Big 12 championship game, like up until the last few weeks of the season. They were in the driver's seat for that whole conference. But SMU obviously plays in the ACC. They didn't have to. It's funny because all three of the best teams in the ACC, Clemson, SMU, Miami, none of them played each other. So it's really hard to get a good gauge on truly who the best ACC team is. Me personally, I still think it's Miami. But, they choked their aspirations away with blowing a 21-point lead to Syracuse. Can't believe I drove 5.5 hours to watch that happen. Makes me sick. But as far as the argument between SMU and Alabama, I think I would have done the same thing and put SMU in over Alabama. Do I think Alabama is better than SMU? Yes, absolutely. Any normal person would believe that. But Alabama's loss to Oklahoma ultimately, in my opinion, kept them out. SMU only has 2 losses on the season, and one of their losses came on a last-second field goal against Clemson in the ACC title game. So there is no reason to put Alabama above SMU for this final spot. SMU, do I think that they earned their way in? Do I think that they deserve a shot? Yes, because they're still a great team. I think SMU is a really, really, really solid team. Do I think they'll win the national title? No. But do I think they have a fighting chance in the first round? Yes, especially after who they play. So that was my whole spiel about that was the big debate this past weekend. Were you going to put in a 2-loss SMU team who lost their conference title game on a last-second field goal, or were you going to put in a 9-3 Alabama team with 2 horrible losses on the road? I think that they took the easy way out putting SMU in, because realistically, I don't think anybody on that committee believes SMU is better than Alabama. But at the same time, this committee, I believe they do not want to be held responsible for officially killing the conference title games in college football. So we held that off for a year. Who knows what's going to happen in years to come? This is a flawed system, and we're going to talk about the system in general right now. So the top 5 highest rated conference champions get auto bids. First of all, I'm not a fan of the winner of a conference title game is guaranteed an auto bid, and 4 of the 5 highest rated conference champions get first round buys. So realistically, is Arizona State the 4th best team in the country? Absolutely not. Is Boise State the 3rd best team in the country? Absolutely not. I have no issues with Oregon at number 1 and Georgia at number 2. I have no issues with that whatsoever. And then Clemson, being the lowest ranked conference champion, they came in at 16 in the college football playoff rankings. But they're seeded 12th, the final spot, because they're a conference champion. It is so utterly confusing. It really is. It makes more sense as you go to understand the format, but as far as it being a good format, no. This is a terrible format, and it's flawed all the way around. So let's talk about this. Oregon Ducks, the only undefeated team remaining in college football. They just won the Big Ten over Penn State, okay? You would think that they got the number 1 seed in the college football playoff, as they should have. They're the only undefeated team. They're a conference champion. They should get the 1 seed. Fair enough. We got that far. What I'm showing you right now, you know what Oregon's reward for winning the Big Ten title game is? Playing the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State. That is Oregon's reward going forward in the college football playoff. We have to wait patiently to see Tennessee or Ohio State face Oregon in the Rose Bowl. So Penn State has the 6th seed in the college football playoff after losing to Oregon in the Big Ten title game. What is Penn State's punishment for losing the Big Ten title game? They play SMU, number 11 seed SMU, at Penn State in freezing cold temperatures. SMU is from Dallas, Texas. Does anybody think SMU can beat Penn State? Personally, I don't really like Penn State that much. I think they're an overrated team, but realistically, nobody else thinks that SMU has a chance to go on the road to Happy Valley in mid to late December, freezing cold, snow, and upset Penn State. And then if Penn State wins their first round, they go and play Boise State. Outside of Ashton Genty, who's a phenomenal player and the best running back in college football, that's Penn State's punishment? This is a cakewalk to the semifinal games. And if you even go a step further, let's say Penn State beats SMU, they go and face Boise State in the quarterfinals and win that game. Here's the 3 teams that it could come down to for Penn State in the semifinals. You got a team in Indiana that's that's I'd say not as good, maybe even comparable to Penn State. Notre Dame, they've played nobody all year. They're pretty comparable to Penn State. And the Georgia Bulldogs, who will more than likely be without their starting quarterback. Now, granted, Georgia's backup quarterback's pretty good, but he's not Carson Beck. And I've been one of the biggest Carson Beck haters this entire college football season. But Gunnar Stockton's no Carson Beck. So my whole point is on this flawed-ass system is, what does Oregon get for the number 1 seed? Oh, they got the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State. What a reward. And Penn State, for losing the Big Ten title game, their punishment is they get to play 11-seeded SMU, and then if they win that game, Boise State, and then in the semifinals, Georgia, Notre Dame, Indiana, all comparable, especially since Georgia might be without their star quarterback. Talk about a cakewalk to the championship game. Now, do I think Penn State's under enormous pressure? Oh yeah, you bet they are, especially head coach James Franklin. If you had to talk about 2 coaches that are on the hot seat right now, and this college football playoff can directly affect their time as head coaches at their respective programs, Ryan Day and Penn State. Ryan Day at Ohio State and James Franklin at Penn State. Those 2 coaches, in my opinion, are playing for their coaching lives in this CFP. Ohio State, there's a lot of bad blood in Ohio State when it comes to Ryan Day losing to this Michigan team, this terrible, terrible Michigan team at home as 3 touchdown favorites. There's already a lot of angry heads in Columbus. If Ryan Day gets bounced first round, he'll probably be fired before he gets off the field. And James Franklin, he is 1-14 in his career against the top 5, against the AP top 5, the college football top 5, whatever. He is 1-14. His last time beating a top 5 team was Ohio State in 2016, I believe, on the blocked field goal return for a touchdown in Happy Valley. Other than that, James Franklin is given pass after pass after pass after pass. At least Ryan Day, he's got the resume, he's got the wins, for the most part. But these two coaches, they're coaching for their coaching lives right now. If Ryan Day loses to Tennessee, he'll be gone. If James Franklin loses to SMU at home, I think there's grounds for termination there too. This system is just, it baffles me. It really does. Anybody who would sit there and tell me that Arizona State is a top 4 team in the nation, you're full of it. Same thing with Boise. You're full of it. This is my whole problem with auto bids. Even during the era of the 4-team playoff, it was always about getting the 4 best teams going at it for the national title. The committees beforehand have said it's about getting the 4 best teams. In this playoff, in the 12-team iteration, I hear a lot of deserving. I'm going to go through all the teams realistically. Are they a top 12 team? Clemson? Well, the committee doesn't even think that they're a top 12 team. They came in at 16 in the college football playoff rankings this past week. But because they won the ACC, they're seeded 12. They're a 3-loss Clemson team. Does anybody think that they're a top 12 team? I don't. Texas, are they a top 12 team? Yes. Tennessee? Yes. Ohio State? Yes. SMU? You can make an argument, maybe. But yes, sure. Penn State, what has Penn State done all year? Their one big game, 2 big games of the year. Ohio State, and they lost. And the Big Ten championship against Oregon, they lost. The other team I really have a problem with, Indiana. Who the hell has Indiana played all year long? The Big Ten, in my opinion, is a little overvalued. And listen, we've heard for years and years and years, SEC bias. Does it exist? Yes, but it's because college football is still a business. Who owns all these networks? All these networks, they cover the SEC, that cover the Big Ten. The SEC and the Big Ten, those are the 2 powerhouses in college football when it comes to conferences. We get that. There is such thing as, in my opinion, as a fan of the sport, I do see a lot of SEC bias because you look at all these, people wanted to crap on Miami last week because who have they played? They haven't played any good defenses. Well, realistically, how good are these SEC SEC offenses, really? And defenses. I get it that Georgia is comparable, but okay, I'm getting sidetracked, but here's the whole thing. SEC is better than the ACC. Big Ten is better than the ACC. However, Georgia almost lost to Georgia Tech. So how uneven, really, are these conferences? I mean, the ACC is very top-heavy when it comes to Clemson, SMU, and Miami. We get that. My whole thing on the college football playoff right now, though, is just the fact of auto bids in general. This is not the way to do a 12-team playoff, in my opinion. I don't know personally how I would change it, except I would get rid of auto bids. When it comes to the 5 highest ranked conference champions get automatic bids and 4 of them get automatic buys, I'm okay with if the top 5 conference champions, I'm okay with them getting bids. I'm okay with that. But to have them dedicate 4 out of the 5 dedicated to first round buys, that makes no sense to me because you get such a imbalance when it comes to the college football, bracket and seedings in general. It messes it all up. The committee at the beginning of the year, they put this thing right in the ditch from the beginning. This is horrible. I really don't like this 12-team playoff. Like at least the format. I really liked the idea of college football expanding from 4 teams to 12 teams, and then eventually I'm pretty sure it's going to 16 teams. But the format is terrible. This format should be thrown in the dumpster. Arizona State. Okay. So let's go through these. So the winner of Texas and Clemson, they go and play Arizona State. Would anybody be shocked if Clemson or Texas boat raced Arizona State? No. I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever. The only true good, I think Clemson, Texas is a fascinating game to watch. First game in the first round of the college football playoff. Okay, Tennessee and Ohio State. That'll be a good game. Then it goes to Oregon, blah, 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 blah. SMU, Penn State. Does anybody really think that SMU is going to walk into Happy Valley mid-December, snowy, cold as hell, from Dallas, Texas, and upset Penn State in Happy Valley? No. And then Penn State would go play Boise State. Penn State, I have no reason to believe that Penn State wouldn't absolutely bully Boise State. I have no reason to believe that Boise State is a top 3 team because of this crap. Ashton Genty's a phenomenal player. Ashton Genty, in my opinion, is the Heisman Trophy winner. But Penn State would probably boat race SMU and boat race Boise State. Even though I personally don't like Penn State, and I personally think that they've been overvalued this entire year. They've been getting the benefit of the doubt this entire year. The same thing with Indiana. A lot of these teams have been. And then you got Indiana and Notre Dame. In-state rival. In-state matchup. I love that. I love that. You don't see that happen often. Notre Dame is probably going to beat the brakes off of Indiana. It would not shock me whatsoever. And then Notre Dame would play Georgia. I think Notre Dame could win that game. My whole thing on this playoff format is just there is so much inconsistency. And especially with the committee values, there's just so much crap to dissect when it comes to this thing. So my whole spiel about this entire, I get it, I'm rambling now, and it seems like there's no, end in sight when it comes to this, but I can't get over the fact that Oregon, as the number 1 seed in this entire playoff, their reward for getting the number 1 seed and winning the Big Ten championship is to face the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State, when Penn State's punishment for losing the Big Ten championship is to play SMU in the first round and possibly Boise State, and then possibly even further Indiana, Notre Dame, or Georgia without Carson Beck. Penn State has one of the easiest roads to the semifinals and the college football playoff. National title. Penn State has the easiest cakewalk when it comes to getting to the national title game. Oregon's got a gauntlet on that side of the bracket. Penn State, Georgia, realistically, Georgia has an easy walk to the national title game, but that's only if Carson Beck plays. If he doesn't play, this side of the bracket is all Penn State. If they don't make it to the national title, I would say James Franklin should be fired. That's my whole opinion on the national title and the college football playoff. Now, let's transition a little bit. I'm going to go over who I think is actually going to win, who I think is going to make it to the national title. And obviously, we're going to go week by week once this playoff just starts. I'm going to go week by week, and we'll talk about it more as the weeks come on. But in the first round, you have number 12, Clemson, going on the road to the 5th-seeded Texas Longhorns. This is a fascinating game just because Clemson's defense is one of the best defenses in the nation, along with Texas. But I do trust Texas offense more than I trust Cade Klubnik and Clemson. I trust that Clemson's defense will keep them in it for as long as they can. but I think Texas will end up pulling away. So I think Texas moves on to the quarterfinal. Tennessee at Ohio State. Number 9, Tennessee going on the road to Columbus to face the 8-seeded Buckeyes. I think, personally, Ohio State, as talented as they are, I think Ohio State had the worst luck of the draw. What is Ohio State's weakness? The offensive line. What is Tennessee's biggest strength? Their defensive line. What is one thing Ohio State has struggled with recently? Stopping the run, hence the Michigan game. What is the thing that the Tennessee offense does so well? Run the football. Dylan Sampson for Tennessee is way better, in my opinion, than Khalil Mullings from Michigan. So I think, unfortunately, Ohio State, if they could get their offensive line right, they have a chance. But realistically, I think this is a terrible matchup for the Ohio State Buckeyes. I really do. They've struggled to stop the run recently, and their offensive line is battered and bruised to hell. So I think Tennessee goes on the road to Columbus and upsets Ohio State, effectively ending Ryan Day's career at Ohio State. Next first-round game. SMU, 11-seeded SMU, going on the road to Happy Valley to face the 6-seeded Penn State Nittany Lions. I think Penn State's going to win. I think SMU is a great story. I think they're a good team. I don't necessarily think they're a great team. I'm going to take Penn State probably by 2 touchdowns against SMU. I'm thinking about location, time of year, just the fact that it's 108,000 people that's going to be there. I don't know if SMU can walk into Happy Valley with a win. So Penn State, I'll have move into the quarterfinal. Indiana on the road to Notre Dame. As much as I love Indiana's offense, it reminds me a lot of Miami. A great offense, a terrible defense. And I only say Indiana has a terrible defense because they've played nobody all year except Ohio State, and they got absolutely battered and bruised in that game and literally beat the hell out of by the Buckeyes. So I'll take Notre Dame because they've been playing really well, even though Notre Dame realistically hasn't played anybody either this entire year. So I'm going to take the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to move on to the quarterfinal. All right, so let's move on to the quarterfinal. You would have Texas and Arizona State. Come on. Realistically, Texas probably wins by 2 touchdowns. I'm going to take the Longhorns to advance to the semifinals. Tennessee against Oregon. Tennessee's a great story, not a great team, in my opinion also. I would take Oregon over Tennessee. Penn State, Boise State. I mean, come on. Penn State. Penn State would probably win by 2 or 3 touchdowns. Again, I'm not discrediting anything that Boise State has done this year. They've had a great season, but they play in the Mountain West, which is notoriously weaker than the ACC and Big 12 standards. Never mind the Big 10 and the SEC. I think Penn State beats Boise State probably by 2 or 3 touchdowns. Ashton Jeanty gets his, but I don't realistically think Boise State doesn't have enough firepower whatsoever to compete with Penn State. So I'll have Penn State in the semis. Notre Dame and Georgia. This all depends on Carson Beck's health. If Carson Beck plays, Georgia will win. If Carson Beck does not play, Notre Dame will win. I'm going to go out on a limb from what I've been hearing that Carson Beck is really injured and he may not play. I'm going to go with if Georgia played with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback, I would have Notre Dame moving to the semifinals. So the semifinal games, I would have Texas against Oregon and Georgia against Penn State. I personally would take Texas over Oregon, just personally. I like Texas quarterback and defense better than I like Oregon's. So I would take Texas to move to the national title. And obviously, I would have I wouldn't have Georgia. I would have Notre Dame against Penn State in the other semifinal game. I think Notre Dame could beat Penn State. I like Notre Dame's defense. I really do. And I think they would snuff out Drew Aller and that offense. So, my national title, right now, prediction. My national title prediction. Texas against Notre Dame. Will it happen? We'll see. This playoff is so screwed. This playoff sucks. It really does. Like, there's so much... Penn State has such a cakewalk. They really do. It bugs the hell out of me. It really does. But that's the 12-team playoff. That's what we got. A lot of controversy. But hey, I'm all here for controversy. And before I leave here today, these flies, man. I hate flies. But I'm going to give you just to do something small at the end of this episode, I'm going to give you my top 3 Heisman Trophy finalists in order. So my number 1 Heisman Trophy finalist, you guessed it, Ashton Jeanty. Ashton Jeanty has done nothing short of remarkable things for the running back position this year at Boise State. He leads the nation with 2,497 rushing yards. That's first in college football. He has 29 rushing touchdowns. I believe that's first in college football. And he is averaging 7.3 yards a carry. That's just unprecedented for a running back. He is very close to beating Barry Sanders' record for rushing yards in a single season. And he's going to have it. I think he's going to have at least one more game. He's going to have one more game to do it at least. Possibly 2. Who knows? But I think Ashton Jeanty is the clear front runner for the Heisman Trophy right now. Number 2. This is my second favorite to win the Heisman. Everybody's going to call me a homer. But Cam Ward has put himself into a position to compete for the Heisman Trophy. Do I think he's going to win it? No. But his resume alone, I think, warrants him taking a trip to New York as one of the finalists for the Heisman Trophy. So at Miami this year, he has 4,123 yards passing. First of all, that's second in the nation, only behind Kyle McCord, and that's the University of Miami record. Passing touchdowns, he has 36 on the year. Number 1 in college football, I believe number 1 in college football, and also another University of Miami record. Total QBR, 88.0. That is number 1 in college football. When you look at the value that Cam Ward added to the Hurricane season this year, without Cam Ward, I love all my Miami fans, but realistically, without Cam Ward, what would our record realistically be? It wouldn't be 10-2. I can tell you that. Cam Ward, his value alone should put him in the Heisman conversation for what he meant to the University of Miami this year. But over 4,000 passing yards, almost 40 touchdowns on the year, passing-wise, and an 88.0 QBR, number 1 in college football. I think judging based off of what Cam Ward has done for Miami warrants him a seat at the table for the Heisman Trophy. Do I think he's going to win it? No. I think if he was in the college football playoff, would he have a better shot? Yes. But unfortunately, Miami is not. And therefore, I would have Cam Ward as my second favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. And my third and final Heisman Trophy finalist, even though I don't think he's the best wide receiver in the country or the best cornerback in the country, Travis Hunter. Listen, snaps isn't a stat, but I still think Travis Hunter is a generational talent. I think he's phenomenal. I don't know what he'll play in the NFL, but he has 1,152 receiving yards on the year. He has 14 touchdowns, receiving touchdowns, and he also has 4 interceptions. I think he's just, when I think Heisman Trophy, I think of well-rounded athletes too. And I think Travis Hunter embodies that. Do I think he deserves as much praise as he's getting? No. I don't, because he's not the best wide receiver in the country. He's not. Jeremiah Smith would like to have a word. Same thing with Ryan Williams from Alabama. I think there's plenty wide receivers that are actually better than Travis Hunter. And defensive backs, come on. He's not the best DB. He's one of them. But I think that goes to the Michigan DB. I forget his name. I believe it's Will Johnson. But either way, the DB from Michigan, clearly better than Travis Hunter. So in my opinion, Travis Hunter has warranted his position as top 3 finalist. Do I think he is 3? Yes. Just because I do not believe him to be the best wide receiver in college football or the best DB in college football. But collectively, what he's done on the football field is nothing short of amazing. The amount of snaps this kid has played this year, I couldn't do it. That's me personally. I couldn't do it. But tip of the cap to them. So that would be my personal Heisman Trophy rankings. That's how I would see it right now. Ashton Genty, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter. That's my order that I have. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, everyone. Again, I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's